My last video on chapter 20 has to do with the amortization of prior service costs. In the previous video, I went over the corridor approach, which is how we calculate the amortization of unrealized gains and losses. But if you think back to our pension worksheets, we also amortized prior service costs, those adjustments that had to be made because there was a change in the plan that implied our service costs in previous years were not the correct amount. So it's a little simpler process, but I want to walk through it. For this problem, the data we're using, we have three groups of employees. They're grouped by when they plan to retire. In Group A, we have 20 employees that are retiring at the end of 2020, at the end of the current year. We have 30 employees in Group B who are retiring at the end of 2021. And lastly, we have 40 employees in Group C who will be retiring at the end of 2022. So we have a total of 90 employees. The amount of prior service cost we have is $44,000. Now, what we effectively do is we amortize that over the number of remaining service years that are represented by our current employees. So in this first schedule, I have calculated the number of service years that are being worked each year. Now, Group A is retiring at the end of this year. So that's 20 service years in 2020 and no service years for the following years because they're retiring at the end of current year. Group B has 30 service years represented by the 30 employees in that group, and those 30 employees lead to service years for both 2020 and 2021 because they're retiring at the end of 2021. But zero service years for the year 2022 because they will have already been retired. And then lastly, we have Group C that is not retiring for 3 years. So there's 40 years represented by the 40 employees for each of the 3 years in question. So in 2020, we effectively have 90 service years being worked. In 2021, we have 70, and in 2022, we have 40, for a total of 200 service years. In the next schedule, I'm going to calculate the amount of amortization each year. So for 2020, we pulled the 90 service years being worked that year, and then we calculated a cost per service year, and all I did there was I took the $44,000 in prior service costs and divided it by the total service years of 200 represented by our current employees. That 220 then, if we multiply it by the 90 service years being worked in 2020, means in 2020 we need to amortize $19,800. You'll notice the cost per service year doesn't change. In 2021, we have 70 service years being worked. The amortization is going to be equal to 70 times the $220 cost per service year, or $15,400. And then same thing in 2022, we have 40 service years multiplied by the $220 cost per service year, and we will amortize $8,800. And as you can see, by the end of the 3-year period, we've amortized the full $44,000. If you think about it, what we're doing is we're amortizing the service cost against the future years of benefit we're getting from these employees. Total accrual-based accounting.